Hi, this is John Rull for the Rull Report. Today is Thursday, July 31st, 2025. I'd like to welcome everyone to my channel. I hope you find these videos informative. You're always welcome to leave a comment in the comment section below. So let me get right in on the topic for today's video, which is whether President Donald J. Trump is starting to become like President George W. Bush. I think that there's common points and differences. I decided to focus on the key common points in this video. So anyway, let me get right in on the topic. Point number one is the transformation of an America First president and America First agenda into an interventionist president and a lack of domestic policy. During the presidency of George W. Bush, he began his campaign on building infrastructure and not having foreign wars and foreign conflicts. And once he became president, he began dropping bombs here and there and spending the nation's money on foreign conflicts rather than investing that in U.S. infrastructure. So President Bush went from America First agenda to an interventionist agenda. With President Trump, he also promised an America First agenda as part of the MAGA, Make America Great Again. And we started to see a little bit of that at the beginning of his presidency. We had Doge eliminating government offices and government expenses that were unnecessary, but they get to a very high percentage of the overall cost of government. Then Doge got to the Defense Department and many other places, or the CIA, or many other places, to see where the money was being spent, what it was being spent on, whether we need those programs or not, with the idea of reducing the cost of government and reducing our national debt. But once President Trump got in office, the agenda seemed to get tabled more and more, until the point where it's not looking that President Trump is focusing more and more on his war on the BRICS and his attempts to resolve the conflict in Ukraine favorably for the U.S., NATO, and Ukraine. So anyway, we're starting to see a movement away from a domestic agenda towards international affairs and international conflicts. So that's point number one. So yes, in that point number one, President Trump is starting to look like President George W. Bush. Let's take point number two, the ICC. The ICC, the International Criminal Court, is an institution that is not liked by many countries because of its inconsistent and partial manner of application of justice. And it seems to go only after certain parts of the globe and those who are opposed to U.S. or NATO policies. We didn't get the ICC to go after any members of the Bush administration after it became clear of what was done for the United States to invade Iraq. But the reason why Bush was opposed to the ICC was because of the comments and criticism of the ICC about the U.S.'s tactics for the war on terror, the torture, and the disappearing of people into black sites, and many other things that the U.S. was doing to try to conduct this quote-unquote war on terror by giving terror. And so Bush was opposed to the ICC. The ICC never really did much, and after the war in Iraq, the ICC kind of went into the shadows, only to come out again with the conflict in Gaza. So the ICC issued an arrest warrant for President Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel. And so President Trump has sanctioned members of the ICC, and it's not looking like President George W. Bush in his opposition towards the ICC. If we go on to point number three, which is the unilateral international actions, President George W. Bush had this as part of his strategy, kind of the headless chicken strategy. The war in Iraq was one example of that. But President Trump is starting to follow in that direction. He likes that tough guy image of the wrestling world, the WWF. He likes to get on the microphone and talk about now how he's going to batter somebody and how they're going to have to, obey him and all that chatter that goes on at the wrestling. So he really likes that. And it may be good for entertainment, but when it comes to international affairs, that tends to be very ineffective and unproductive. So Bush and President Trump are starting to look more and more alike. Now let's move on to point number 4, the tax cuts for the wealthy. President Bush passed some major tax cuts in 2001 and 2003, which prioritized high income. President Trump recently passed the Big Beautiful Bill, which focused on the top 10%. And in that way, President Trump and President Bush look very similar. Point number 5, we can move on to the binary high stakes rhetoric. President Trump starting to follow that same mindset. President Bush said, every nation, every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists. And President Trump is basically saying something similar. He's saying every nation and every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with Russia. His attitude towards the BRICS nations has become very bellicose. And in that way, President Trump is now starting to look like President Bush with his binary high stakes rhetoric. So anyway, after these 5 points, I think it's pretty clear that in some ways, President Trump is starting to look like President George W. Trump still has 3.5 years left of his presidency, and so things could change. He could return back to, a domestic policy. He could bring Elon back. He could get Doge to go into the Defense Department. He could get him to go into the NSA, to the and some of these government agencies that don't seem to have any oversight of the use of funds. We don't even know how much money many of those government agencies get or where it goes. So anyway, President Trump's turned a corner, but currently it's looking like he's starting to look more and more like President George W. Bush, and that will mean do you agree or disagree? Feel free to leave a comment down below, and if you have some other point you thought it was important, feel free to make it. Maybe I'll make another video and go over a few more points. But for the moment, I think those are the big ones. And I wish everyone a great day. That's it for me for today. Take care. Bye-bye.